And as promised, we have returned, and thank you for coming back to the second segment here at the DMZ America podcast. I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
As promised from the first segment, this is going to be a shorty because it entails math, and we don't want to lose you forever. The Federal Reserve Board kicked up the prime interest rate another quarter, or the other interest rate, but they kicked it up a quarter percent.
Rate. The Fed funds rate is the rate at which banks lend money to each other and borrow money from the Federal Reserve Bank.
Just so, and they raised another quarter percent. And here's the thing, Ted, this is one of those things that Ted is indulging me because it really pisses me off because I hate government intrusion in the economy, overreach, and that's exactly what this is. Let's go look at the numbers very quickly. Unemployment, record lows, and jobs available are at record highs. We can talk about wages. That's another issue, but jobs are available. That's number one. Inflation, and the latest number that came out today, under 3%. We are fine with inflation. The GDP actually went up a shocking percent, like 4%. That is fantastic. The economy is good. The economy is sound. The State of the Union is good. I don't know why I'm doing that. Anyway, so the Federal Reserve Board, but the Federal Reserve Chairman Powell said in a press conference after they raised it, saying that we're still trying to fight inflation, a fight that shouldn't be fought because the fight has been fought and won. It's like Muhammad Ali standing over, George Foreman. He's knocked out. You can't knock him out any more than knocked out. It's over. They won. Woohoo! They brought the economy in for a soft landing. What they can do if they persist in raising the interest rates is trigger a recession. God bless the Biden administration because we didn't have one. See, a right-wing guy giving props to the Biden administration.
And a reflexively anti-corporate Democrat guy totally agrees with you. In my view, that was Biden's biggest accomplishment by far.
So,
it's a big one. It's a very, very good one. It's a very important one.
And you've mentioned this on the podcast and on your radio show that he's not going to get any credit because he did something that made something not happen. So right. The Americans are going to go, it no happen, me no hurt. So
yeah, let's say you go to see your doctor and he says, Scott, you really need to stop eating so much cheese because if you don't stop eating cheese, you will get ass cancer. So you stop eating so much cheese and you never get ass cancer. Well, you're like, in the back of your mind, you're like, maybe I wouldn't have gotten ass cancer anyway. And so you never appreciate him, even if he was right. And it's just like that. In the back of Americans' minds, it's like, yeah, maybe he didn't really have to do what he did with pouring all that money into the economy, and a lot of it got stolen, and maybe nothing would have happened. Who knows?
That's right. There are problems with it. There's no question. I mean, nothing's perfect because it's human institutions and human beings are fallible, as we all know all too well. But the Federal Reserve sticking its nose into the economy now and keeping it there just smacks of bureaucratic overreach. Reminds me a little bit, there was, and this ties together. In California, when I first moved back there back in the mid-70s, they had a drought, not surprisingly, because it's an arid part of the world. They had rationing, and the water boards, unelected, appointed boards, instituted rationing. I think it was 2 years later, California had one of its wettest winters in history. The reservoirs filled up to brimming, water, drought over. There was at least a handful of water boards, appointed, not elected, that continued to have these rules in place when they weren't necessary until the courts finally said, guys, knock it off. This feels the same way. It's a bureaucrat, unelected, who has the power to do these things and feels compelled to exercise that power, even at the detriment of an economy that is doing very well and is very stable right now. And it makes me furious. I've never been a fan of the Federal Reserve Board to begin with.
What about the Federal Reserve Bank? Look, the idea of a reserve bank is that it limits, it replaces what we used to have in the early days of the Republic, where individual banks and even other entities like states and
Yeah.
municipalities
Yeah.
issued their own currency. And believe it or not, as weird as that sounds, that somewhat worked, although it definitely made the inflation rate like erratic, and sometimes people would just go crazy and print money. There was that collapse under Andrew Jackson, right? What they called the
Well,
hard times period.
right, because
Where,
he shut down the American bank.
right. And it got so crazy that the banking system didn't even have the ability to mint pennies anymore. And so people started minting their own private personal pennies. They're called hard times tokens. And they're actually a fascinating thing to collect because they're satirical and they make all sorts of political commentary on the situation.
Really?
And they're pretty funny. There's like jokes at the expansion making fun of Henry Clay, people making fun of Jackson, of course, and it's pretty hilarious. But the thing is, you have to. So in our system, the idea is that there's a fixed amount of dollars in circulation. If you didn't have our system, then anybody could print money, and who knows how much of any of it would be worth. I kind of saw that in action in Afghanistan under the Taliban, and immediately after the Taliban, there was no central bank because from 1996 to 2003 in Afghanistan. And so what happened, because it was basically a failed state. So there were, believe it or not, only two warlords that had somehow gotten the old printing blocks for banknotes from pre-1996. And one of them was based in Moscow and had a printing press there. The other one, I don't know where his printing press was. They were both for the same denomination, the 10,000 Afghani note. They're both bluish green, but one's more blue and one's greener. And so I don't remember which was which, but one of them was considered to be worth twice as much as the other one.
Wow.
And so when you went to the money market, of course, because nobody really knew how much was in circulation, there's no central bank. The inflation rate was staggering, and it was something like 1.2 million Afghanis to the dollar. So it was like living in Weimar, Germany, where you'd get a backpack to carry your like $100 worth of Afghanis. If you had to get like $1,000, you could really hurt yourself. I'm not even kidding. And I still have a bunch of them in sheaves somewhere left over.
Cool.
And they're, so anyway, the point is, Scott, would you say we should not have a central bank? Or are you saying, because if you are going to have a central bank, well, then the only purpose of the central bank is to do exactly what they're doing, which is to try to regulate the money supply in a way that prevents inflation.
Right. And that's also, I would have been much happier, Ted, if I was born in like the late 1800s, because I would have been a Republican then, because I believe in the gold standard. So the election of 1896, I would have totally been for McKinley.
Mm-hmm. I would have definitely been a Bryan man.
Yeah. See, but having hard currency behind, having something behind the currency and controlling the currency, I just think,
that's been proven to have been stupid. That like the FDR went off the gold standard and nothing happened.
Well, you have a fluctuation in the price of currency, but they also don't forget there was strict rules on the price of gold, which seemed weird to me. It should have just floated.
It was fixed at $35 an ounce.
Yeah. So you have a Federal Reserve. Yes. Do we need that kind of central banking? We do. But to this extent, to an extent where here's where we are, Ted. A dollar is worth a dollar. You know why? Because we think it's worth a dollar.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fascinating story. I want to say it was in the New York Times. Could have been elsewhere, but they did it on platinum, and platinum is worth more than gold.
Oh yeah, a lot more.
There's a lot more platinum than there is gold in the world. Why is platinum worth more than gold? Because we say it is.
Because
it's a fiction, and this ties into
that's just true about diamonds. That's true about, I mean, that's true about anything, right? I mean, why does an avocado have value? Why does,
because
and
they're delicious.
why does it have value different from an apple?
Not Florida avocados; they suck.
Apparently
But
there's these
California
new
avocados.
avocados that are meant to be really good. I forget. I know there's the Haas avocado, which is like the one that really is yummy. People,
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
those. They're so
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Okay. So my point is that this ties into our previous segment, which is we live in a world where fiction is fact and fact is fiction. Oh, well, okay. We're going to go on. Speaking of which, we're going to move on to another subject of fiction and bullshittery and again, looking at
Malarkey.
and malarkey and looking at a justice system that's quite frankly completely and utterly fucked up. So on that note, I'm Scott Stantis coming to you from the right for DMZ America.
And I'm Ted Rall coming to you from the left, but also for DMZ America.
What are the odds? Well, I guess apparently pretty good because we set this up. We'll be back in just a sec. Stick around.